The week had already been long, and was going by slowly, with each day seeming like it took a week to go by, while it was the same old humdrum daily churning of schoolwork and classes with the usual lack of excitement. That is when things started to change, because in their history class they took together that day. John and Billy had been assigned a book report on their favorite subject by their teacher to be done over the weekend, while they was off from school. They had decided to do their report on a famous gunfighter from the Wild West, something they both had fantasies of being theirself. Living in the Wild West and saving the damsels in distress, while saving entire towns from criminals who thought of killing as a sport of some kind, and they took joy in seeing which one could outdo the others in making a name for the entire Hopalo gang to which they belonged. In the midst of a quiet and fairly low crime-rated neighborhood lived two best friends who played outside and went to school together. Their names were John and Mark. They was two young, teenage boys who had daydreamed a lot, almost daily, about life in the Wild West, which to them never seemed to have a boring moment with all the shootouts, poker games, saloon girls, and getting to ride off on their horses to new places and new adventures, and they both was so excited as they read the book together that they had found that told all about their Western hero, Masked Mark, the hired gunfighter, who had came into town to fight against the outlaws known as the Hopalo gang that was thieving, robbing, and killing, as they made their trails over the western plains, leaving a trail of destruction, and their crimes of robbing to killing and bank robberies and anything in between. Masked Mark, the hired gunfighter, was set to make contact with the lowly sheriff, who was too scared of the Hopalo gang to go up against them, or to do anything to help the town, and its people for that matter. He just slithered back into his sheriff office, and stayed there as the Hopalo gang had their way with the town, its women, the whiskey, and turned the saloon into their free-for-all party headquarters, where they planned their next crime spree, and without someone to stop them who knew when they might leave the town of Blissful, Texas, and move on to their next unsuspecting place, wherever that might be, to pick up where they left off here. Upon his arrival, the Hopalo gang was too drunk and occupied by the saloon girls to notice him riding into town and making his way to the sheriff's office. Once there, when he found the sheriff hiding in his office, and got him to answer the door finally, he let him know he was Masked Mark, a hired gunfighter, who had been sent for, due to the crisis in Blissful, Texas, and a sheriff who was powerless to do anything due to being a coward, and let him know of his intentions on putting the Hopalo gang out of action for good while he was in town, no matter what it took. The boys was reading the part about the shootout that Masked Mark was caught up in with the Hopalo gang, the biggest, baitest, meanest, low-down gang ever to roam the western plains, and was leaving their mark everywhere they had been with no end in sight. Masked Mark was outnumbered. There was one of him with only a couple people in the town brave enough to want to help him, yet the Hopalo gang was made up of 15 to 18 of the dirtiest, meanest, most honorary, and toughest criminals that even Masked Mark had ever ran across, and to this point, no matter how hard anybody had tried, there was no stopping them. They had killed sheriffs, gunfighters, innocent people, other outlaws. They had no scruples and no morals, and they just mowed their way over anybody who got in their way or tried to go up against them, and their reputation had preceded them to the town of Blissful in Texas, and had everyone living in fear both day and night, for the Hopalo gang would strike any time they wanted. It did not matter if it was daylight or dark. They would kill off anyone they thought might be a witness to what they'd done, or who they could identify any of them to author ties without a second thought. That is what had made them so hard to find, till they stayed longer in Blissful, Texas than they had ever stayed anywhere before, and that was their first mistake, as it gave Masked Mark time to track them and catch up to them where they was at when he arrived. He was avid with excitement. Masked Mark was no ordinary gunfighter. He had taken out up to 10 men in a 10-to-1 showdown without getting as much as grazed by a single bullet. He was a living legend whose name even brought fear to the members of the Hopalo gang, though they would never admit to being afraid of anything of anybody. Their excitement overtook them as they was making shooting sounds and yelling profanities toward the bad guys, when from nowhere the head librarian came around the corner like one of the outlaws searching for their prey, and blew her whistle at them, and brought them crashing back into reality, and making them once again aware of their surroundings in the library. Immediately they scurried away, and climbed up in their chairs, and was silent as the dark of night. Their excitement was still in their eyes, along with the fear that the librarian would come and toss them out, like the bouncers who controlled the saloons when their customers got out of hand. And so the rest of their time at the library went along without a hitch that day. On their way out, as they passed the librarian, they said until next time, and they tipped their cowboy hats as they went out the door on their way home. They couldn't wait to finish reading their books on Masked Mark and the Hoopla Gang when they got home, and then writing their report, and in their mind they would reading their wanted posters on the gang they was chasing, and had every intention of saving the towns from and rescuing any damsels in distress. Oh, what a weekend this was going to be! It had them anxious for Monday to come again.